Bore pawb. Wythnos Gwaith Ieuenctid hapus. Happy Youth Work Week. It's fantastic to have you here today, and great to be able to talk to you about impact leadership in practice. I did look up the collective noun for speakers. I'm going with an extravaganza of experts. And we've got lots of those lined up for you today. Some fantastic speakers, voices from the field. We have Simon Frost as well with us, and then we'll be having breakout rooms and a plenary session at the end of the session. As it's one of the warmest days of the year, we decided to keep you all indoors for an hour and a half, but it will be a stimulating session, I'm sure, and we'll get into that in a second. Please, could you all stay on mute until we get to the breakout rooms at 10:30, please. I want to listen to Josh, to Mel, Rhys, Marco and Janet in the first session from now until 10:05. Then we'll be talking about leading with impact with Simon Frost. We're going into breakout rooms at 10:30, and the plenary session and the Q&A will take place from 10:45. So I think we're going to dive in to the first section, which is the voices from the field. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you to Charlotte and Geraint from Niall for being the engine room and making all of this happen. We're talking about leadership today. I think a lot of the time leadership comes from that engine room. Without people like Charlotte and Geraint, other people wouldn't be able to do their jobs. So thank you both very much indeed. When we get to the breakout sessions, you can join a Welsh language room if you add the letters CYM to the start of your name. We'll come back to that when we get to that particular session. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat bar as well. Tell us who you are, where you're working, and we'd love to hear from you in that regard. So we're going to kick off with voices from the field. And first, the drum roll is for somebody who works for Monmouthshire County Council. No doubt he'll introduce himself and his title as he starts his presentation. And that's Josh Klein. Josh.
Well, morning, everyone. Happy Youth Work Week. As Paul said, my name's Josh Klein. I think a lot of you will have come across me at some point. But I'm here in my capacity today as the Principal Youth Officer for Monmouthshire County Council. I'm also currently the chair of the National Principal Officers group. So all 22 local authorities have a Principal Youth Officer that get together throughout the year. So I'm the current chair now, and I started my term about 3 weeks ago. So I'll be the chair for the next 2 years. So as Paul said as well, I'm the first voice from the field. So I was really honoured to be asked to be here and kind of share my experience. So I've probably got about 5 to 10 minutes just talking you through a bit of a case study from my own experience within my youth service down in South East Wales. I'm here to talk to you about my kind of recent experiences through that project, the collaborative work that we did, the impact that had on the young people that we worked with and supported, the community partners, my own service. And then also we're going to look a little bit towards the end at leadership and kind of maybe some of the leadership qualities and styles and methodologies that enabled that to work so effectively. So that was my first slide. So if we go on to the next slide, please. I was just going to give you a bit of context about kind of Monmouthshire itself. I'm not sure if people are that familiar. So in South East Wales, it's a border county. You've got 6 main towns. So that's Abergavenny and Monmouth in the north, Usk in the centre, and then Caldicot, Chepstow and Magor with Undie is the newest town in Monmouthshire down in the south. And that's the way that we kind of break our service up, is kind of north and south in terms of our open access offer. We've got around 15,000 11 to 25-year-olds. So we're a local authority youth service. I've got about 20 staff. 15 of them are full-time and 5 are part-time staff. The part-time staff typically work 3 hours a week to run youth clubs in community buildings in the rural areas, and we've got just under 30 volunteers. The work that we do, it's a mix of open access youth work. So we've got 4 youth centres in Monmouth, Abergavenny, Caldicot and Chepstow. We've got youth clubs dotted round the county, and we work in collaboration with charities or third sector partners to run some of the youth centres and youth clubs. For example, the youth centres in Caldicot and in Monmouth, we work in partnership with charities who lease the building for us to do the youth work out of. So we've got some good relationships there with the voluntary sector. We also do things like outreach work, which is informed through some antisocial behaviour meetings that we'll talk about shortly. We do school-based work, a bit of year 6 primary stuff when we're looking at transition, and youth forums. We also do targeted work then, as well as the open access youth work. So the partnership work that we deliver targeted work through is mostly around emotional health and well-being, LGBTQ, Welsh language and ethnic minorities, and we've got service level agreements with the Earth, East and Platform to deliver some of that stuff. So that's just a bit about what youth work and my team looks like in Monmouthshire. So on to the actual case study now, if you don't mind. So if you go on to the next slide, please, Charlotte, that should be some newspaper cuttings. So this is a project I was particularly proud of. It was the first thing I thought of when I was approached to talk about this subject. So it was a project that was funded through the Home Office's Safer Streets 4 fund, which had a focus on antisocial behaviour. Now you can see from those headlines, I think you can see them well enough, that one of our towns, Caldicot, in the southeast of Monmouthshire, was getting a pretty bad rap in the local news, the national news even, and you know, young people were being tarnished with a very bad brush, I guess, and so the names were coming up in lots of multi-agency forums, in antisocial behaviour meetings, in problem-solving meetings. You know, there was lots of meetings, and at one point there was a top 10 young people. They were kind of being banded as the ones that were considered the biggest troublemakers, or the names that were being associated with these headlines the most. Now, we knew all of those young people. They came to our youth centre in Caldicot, the Zone, and we had good relationships with them. So it was really interesting to kind of hear other people's perspectives, and also the fact that when we were working with them, those young people respected the building, they respected the staff, and our impression of those young people was not the impression that was shared by the community at that point. So those relationships were recognised in all of those fora I just mentioned. So people said, the young people are causing antisocial behaviour, people are intimidated, but we recognise that the work that you do with some of these young people is a lot different. So that was a bit of a pat on the back for us, but we decided what we could do more, and to kind of increase our capacity, increase our offer, because our youth centre is open probably 3 evenings a week, and some of this stuff that was being reported on was going on outside of those periods. So we decided to apply for what we called a youth engagement package. So the purpose of that was to work in partnership and increase sessions for young people in Caldicot, which included at the Zone Youth Centre, around the town centre, and the leisure centre. We wanted to do more detached or outreach work, with a view to kind of go where those young people are, and bring them back or signpost them or refer them into services. We worked with families of the young people. We worked with Caldicot Leisure Centre, the sports development team for the County Council, Positive Futures at the Town Council, Caldicot School, and then we worked with the police, the CSOs, the CADRA, which is the Crime and Disorder Reduction Officer within the council, and also some housing associations. So we all got together and kind of worked out what we could do with this funding, and in terms of kind of interventions and prevention to kind of support the young people, give them maybe more to do, and kind of build some services around some of their needs and wants and interests, and kind of find out what would make them engage and kind of reduce some of their antisocial behaviour. So that it was a very collaborative project, and the young people loved it. They loved the fact that there was more on offer. They loved the fact that they had the say, and they could kind of suggest things in terms of our school holiday provision, which they obviously normally would. But I think it was that empowering, to enable them to kind of have a voice and say what it was about their local town that maybe they didn't like, or what they thought would be good. So it was great from that point point of view as well. So we were successful with the funding. So for my service, what it meant was we were able to take on 7 members of staff who were mostly kind of completely new to youth work, and we were able to train them, so kind of issue them with mentors and coaches from within the team. We did their training and their qualifications, so took on 7 new staff, and they all were enrolled on the level 3 certificate in youth work practice. It was all temporary, funded for a year to 18 months. But within that time, if those people's temporary contracts came to an end, it kind of meant that they would be leaving with a level 3 certificate in youth work practice, which meant that they could register with the EWC as a youth support worker. They could go into youth work as a profession. So even if we weren't able to retain those 7 people ourselves, we were kind of, it was good for youth work that there'd be 7 more youth support workers. So that was the kind of aim of the project and where we came from. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Charlotte, there we go, perfect. So this slide, there's not too many words on it. I tried to keep the words in this presentation low. This is some findings that Bath Spa University conducted. So they were commissioned by the Home Office to evaluate some of the projects that were funded through the Safer Streets 4 provision. So these are some of the outcomes that Bath Spa found. From my point of view, it was an amazing 18 months for us as a service, with the fact that, we had all these extra bodies, and that we were able to be training all these people, and obviously the outcomes for young people through all of our collaboration work. It was just, you can see some of the impacts and outcomes there. With regard to youth wellbeing, just to kind of pick that one up a little bit, the third one down, it was thought that better mental and physical health was found, and there was an increased knowledge and skills, an increased self-confidence, self-worth and respect, which I can kind of attain to. We saw all of that in our project. With regard to improved youth relationships, the second bullet point down, that included positive relationships with peers and members of the public. It kind of started to bridge a gap between the community and young people, so it wasn't a them versus us kind of scenario. And that we definitely felt through that there was a sense of community cohesion, which was a real nice kind of destination to get towards. So from partners' point of views, relationships between young people and them improved, and the engagement was all positive, and the levels of engagement was higher, and the number of ASB calls to the police decreased to 0. So it was massively successful and impactful, going from those headlines that I showed you a couple of minutes ago to having 0 calls to the police about youth antisocial behaviour. For my service, successes included obviously an increase in contacts, an increase in signposted and referrals for more support for young people with complex needs. So more collaborative work with specialist services then to support those young people that we've mentioned. Our reputation as a youth service improved, and the visibility and impression of youth work, I feel like the status rose of it. In Caldecott particularly, we were kind of applauded and seemed real central to the success of that for the town. So it was great for us. It was great positioning in terms of decision makers and elected members, which could down the line, potentially result in more funding and all that kind of stuff. For my staff, it was lovely because even though I praise them and we get quite a lot of compliments, it was lovely for them to get that pat on the back, that recognition, and say, what you guys do really works. It really makes an impact. And the fact that it was evidence-based as well. If you looked at what happened before to the 0 calls, it was just lovely for them. It was great for them to link with services that they didn't work with before so closely. And great for the staff to be involved in the growing our own of new staff as well. Those 7 members of staff who all all achieved the level 3 certificate. I know some of them, when their temporary contracts ended, they went off to work for other youth services and some in the voluntary sector. So, you know, that was it was a shame that we trained them and then had to kind of give them away at the end. But, you know, in terms of the wider picture in the field, you know, it was definitely worthwhile kind of what we did. So that was lovely for us. If you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, please, Charlotte. Thanks so much. So this next slide is kind of a bit, I suppose, personal in terms of leading for impact when collaborating. So I was trying to think about how to kind of frame it in terms of maybe the part that I played in facilitating some of that work and the leadership styles of those involved, because leadership, as we said at the very start of this session, it comes at every level. You know, everyone is a leader in some way. So I was thinking about my own kind of input in it. I was thinking about the input of others. And one of the things I realized, which was really nice, I thought, oh, this is going to come across as like really cheesy or something. But actually the values that I felt of effective leadership when collaborating to get us from A to B and get us to where we need to be, they literally mimic, and they've got a massive synergy with youth work values. So in terms of participation, openness, communication, information sharing, transparency, respecting each other and what each other is bringing, you know, the kind of moral and ethical values, you know, they're so transferable and they're so relatable. When I first got into a leadership role myself, I kind of felt that it was quite early on in my career, and had I done enough practicing of youth work, which is why I wanted to get into youth work, was to support people. But then I realized actually the skills that I had as a youth worker were transferable to working with staff and supporting staff and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's what I came back to was the reason I got into youth work. So I was able to use and see from other people all of those skills when we were working collaboratively. Fundamentally, I think the overarching vision and the shared vision, more importantly, is paramount. And then when you've got that vision, it could be the problem that you need to solve. It could just be where you want to get to based on what young people said, or, you know, when you identify the need, that's when your aims and objectives for the work follow then. Having buy-in from all the stakeholders, which means partner agencies, but also members of the community, families, young people themselves. I think that really means that there's opportunities to share resources as well, and expertise within the scope of the work, within the scope of the project, and to involve different people at different times and different levels, trial new ways of doing things. But obviously young people's voice needs to be completely at the center, which I think it was for this project, in terms of some of the activities and the times and some of the stuff that we were able to offer in collaboration with others. I think support and challenge, as long as it's kind of constructive and healthy and safe, is really important. I think a lot of the time organizations are very blinkered, or maybe used to working in silos and kind of thinking about their own aims and objectives and what they want to do. But I think, you know, being able to have that extra set of eyes, that extra set of expertise, that critical friend, all of that stuff only strengthens the work. You know, I'm involved, as a few of you know, quite heavily in the qualifications world, and that internal quality assurance process of qualifications is so valuable in enabling assessors and teachers to see things that they haven't picked up themselves. I think when you're so in a piece of work yourself, it's sometimes difficult to pull yourself away and kind of look into that from a different perspective. So that is a kind of free consultation, is just valuable insight, valuable conversations, and obviously support and challenge is healthy as far as I'm concerned. And I suppose if you're thinking about that and maybe disagreeing with the challenging element, I think we got to remember that the purpose of doing all of this stuff is to provide the best possible service and outcomes for young people. So I'm myself more than happy to be challenged about anything if it means that the work's better and the outcomes for young people are better. So just to summarize, I think injecting a bit of youth work skills, qualities and values into leadership across the whole education sector is probably the best way to ensure collective, collaborative and impactful work with young people in Wales. So that's the end of my presentation. If you want to go to the final slide, Charlotte, or stop sharing, whatever you prefer. And I'm happy to take any questions or yeah, anything.
Brilliant. Thank you, Josh. That was great. And thanks very much for your time, but also those different perspectives and different relationships and the power of youth working amongst that as well, and partnerships and collaboration being the answer, really. I think what we're going to do is make the most of the time we've got, rather than ask questions now. People can put them in the chat if you're happy to answer them directly, but we'll come on to those kind of questions during the breakout rooms and the Q&A later, if that's okay, once people have had a chance to digest all the speakers. So thank you, Josh, really appreciate it. Okay, next up, we have Mel Ryan from Youth Cymru and Rhys Burton, who's the Community Safety Manager for Cardiff and the Vale South Wales Police. Mel, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. And right, I'll just share the screen. And great to hear all the fantastic work going on in Monmouthshire, Josh. So following on from that, we're going to be talking about, sorry, just slipped a slide, fostering community engagement. And I need to get rid of the screen. And fostering community engagement and support. It's a strategic partnership between South Wales Police and Youth Cymru. And I'll just briefly introduce myself. My name is Melanie Ryan. I work for Youth Cymru and I'm also an associate at the Leadership Academy. Youth Cymru is Pan Wales, and we do various things from projects to training to partnerships and lots of other stuff going across Wales. And Rhys, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, bore da pawb. I'm Rhys Burton. I'm the Community Safety Manager covering Cardiff and the Vale. I'm based in Cardiff Bay Police Station. I won't say too much about what South Wales Police is. I think conceptually everyone understands what that organisation is, but bore da pawb.
Thank you, Rhys. So a brief introduction. Our presentation will highlight the collaboration between South Wales Police and Youth Cymru, showcasing the benefits and challenges of working together to support communities effectively. So we took a systems leaders approach, and as Josh shared in his presentation, within youth work, it's how we work. Youth workers work very well collaboratively. They encourage young people to work collaboratively. It's how youth work sort of delivers their projects and their opportunities across Wales and to young people. So multi-agency meetings were established to identify the need for collaboration and shared visions. And within those meetings, we had various other colleagues from different sectors, St Giles Trust and probation and various other people who were around the table. We explored opportunities and insights to identify common goals. We navigated complexity and change because obviously there's challenges when you're working together. There's barriers and lots of discussions have to happen before any sort of funding is applied for to make sure that everybody is reading from the same hymn book really and on the same path. These discussions laid the foundation for strong partnerships, building trust and ensuring that both organisations could effectively address community needs. Lots of needs were brought to the table from the police, from probation, from St Giles, from ourselves, particularly, as Josh said, identifying antisocial behaviour and the additional support that young people need, particularly ex-offenders. And from that, a pilot was applied for through nationwide funding called Aspiring Champions. Aspiring Champions empowers young men 18 to 25 to engage in the project. And these young men were referred to via the police predominantly, who come out of prison and were being supported to engage in training, employment, but also ensuring that they weren't homeless and their housing sort of situation was supported. They had 12 months of intensive support. Some of this support addressed exploitation and different issues they were dealing with in their own communities. And along the way, they built skills, boosted their confidence and gained qualifications. Rhys, do you want to do the bottom slides?
Yeah, we're really concerned. We've just had people who could handhold and be a constant with these individuals. Familiarity and building relationship we feel and felt was really important for them. As Mel said, breaking exploitation. It's really about breaking the dependencies and breaking away often from key influences on them already. I'm sure in many ways all of you will recognise that, and the work you're doing, youth work, will make that reach. Navigating them to services and helping them their confidence to be able to access the services, and particularly in an advocacy type of way. So some of the people that we're working with really don't have the communication skills and aptitudes to be able to present, what their problems are to service providers very well. So in many ways, it's about hand-holding and enabling them by advocating their positions with other agencies as well, and working with them around goal settings. That's about raising their confidence and their aspirations, and helping them really set some stepping stones that are achievable and realistic for them, but which is taking them forward.
Thank you, Rhys. So the impact. We wanted to really empower young men to break the cycle of crime and homelessness. The young people come out and they were really enthusiastic. They really wanted to make a difference to their lives. They wanted to build better relationships with their families. They wanted to do training. They wanted to get into employment, and they didn't want to engage back into criminal activities. They had lots of meetings to go to. They had lots of opportunities, but this can sometimes be overwhelming for the young people, particularly when they got lots of people they're working with. With the mentor that they had, provided that consistency across the different areas that they had to address. So by the end of it, they promoted independence, family support, and community integration. And it wasn't just working with the young people, it was working with their families as well, their partners. Some of them were parents themselves. So it was really working holistically across the field. And Rhys, shall I pass over to you?
Yeah, thank you, Mel. Yeah, I mean, the reason why we as South Wales Police wanted to work with Youth Cymru and to partner in this way is simply because statutory bodies do struggle with a reach into certain communities and engagements. I mean, so often people's experiences of the police is one of need, or one of where the police are intervening to take a family member away, and so it can be seen quite punitive as an organisation. And I think also there's concerns there with media representation of the police, particularly on social media, what people's prejudices might be around the policing experience. I think also from a policing side, there are challenges for us in our operational approaches. Our priorities can sometimes be changed by temporal priorities coming in, making changes there, and whether we have the right experience to be able to reach through to those communities at times and to focus in that youth work way. Grassroots and third sector agencies clearly are in many ways homegrown. They're grown from those communities and they're from the people, for the people. So in many ways, they're in much better positions of trust and relationship than perhaps we as South Wales Police can be at times. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to work very much in this context to reach communities by working with other partners around this. So if we go to the next slide, really. So I've said already about the reach into certain can sometimes be hard, and indeed, public confidence and service proximity to people is a precious commodity, and it brings increased opportunities to influence and secure outcomes that help encourage a safe and thriving society. So quite clearly, by working with the third sector agencies, that reach is important to us. That relationship is important to how we do some of that, in many ways, it's easier in working with a third sector agency because there's access there to funds that we as a statutory body can't access. But conversely, there's opportunities too for third sector agencies by working with statutory partners to be more successful in those applications to make that reach, because they've got a statutory partner in support of their application, and there's more linkage there with the strategic priorities that we have as a statutory body. So there's some joint benefits there for both us and the third sector, but quite clearly the intention is to how we can better reach the client group that we're aiming at, to work with them, to get them on board, to increase their confidences, and that is more commonly with the third sector. So if we move to the next slide. Now, perhaps this title indicates my age a little bit, all right? So I'm sure most of you will get the reference to Gremlins and know that film. But inevitably, what I'm speaking about there is those obstacles and barriers and those things that seem to go bump and cause us a few difficulties at the outset. And quite clearly, we have a few, and all of us have those when we're beginning projects. In our case, it was about encouraging individuals to join a program They are individuals with challenging behaviours and situations where often, trust is quite sparse. So when you've got, our salvation service saying, oh, look, we're working with these partners and we'd really like you to consider this, obviously there's a bit of work there to try to get them to go forward. They're not mandated to do this. It is by choice. So to begin with, there's the obstacles there in trying to encourage that initial trust to take that step forward. And then you've got the usual thing. I can see with my own teenagers, to be honest, but particularly with this age group, the age group we're working with, timekeeping, turnout. It's a matter of trial and error in part, isn't it, of getting people to come along and do things, because as I say, they're not mandated to be there. But the bigger obstacles become issues that we're all familiar with, like data sharing and setting up a WASPI agreement. So actually, between the agencies, we can share that data, and particularly when we're looking at risk management at times on this, and having and knowing something about the client group we're working with, and making sure that Youth Cymru and partners there, we're in a good place to be managing and working with those individuals. And then also in terms of the colleagues in offender management, it's about sometimes from the inside working with them to also work differently, to understand what those agencies do, because they haven't always got familiarity with third sector partners. So in some ways, it's about that internal communication, first of all, to encourage and to nurture and to help understand and contextualize what we're trying to do so that people get it and can move on with it with a partnership approach. The other dynamic of this, of course, then it goes on to the continuity of police personnel, and I will say personally, I'm on my fourth superintendent in 2 years, so I personally know that the turn and churn that we see in an officer context, and so it's really important that actually, when building this relationship, that the reach is beyond one or two individuals within an organisation, and actually conceptually there's others that get it as well, to make that link, because the turn and churn there can affect the progress that we make. So it does impact those things. So I don't know if you want to say anything on the referral process from your side, Mel.
I think if you hit the barriers, I'd say stick with it, because if you work together, you can overcome it. And the data sharing, the GDPR and stuff like that, it was all the sort of red tape that was sort of, in a way, stopping us getting on with the project. Rhys had, a list of young people ready to work with us, and we all just wanted to get on with it. But once the red tape was gone, and as Rhys said, the gremlins were got rid of, then the project flew. So, and it's great to hear the benefit of that Rhys identifies that working with the youth sector also supports the young people they work with and themselves.
Thanks, Mel. Yes, so on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we've got to understand the client group, but it's as much about understanding the individuals within that as well. So quite clearly, there's a range of different types of conditions and backgrounds that people have got, from drug use, alcohol dependency, the types of crimes that they've done, the education standards that they've got. There's a whole raft of things that we understand by adverse childhood experiences, and quite clearly, people's backgrounds and what they've grown up with can often mean that they themselves are societal victims, really. And it's about understanding that and trying to work with those and to support them going forward. So yeah, understanding that group and their backgrounds, is really important. I just want to say on the last point there, I was at North Wales Police Academic Collaboration Research Symposium. That's rather good, isn't it? Last week. And I was listening to Dr. Gwyn Griffiths, who was presenting there, and he was talking about chronic offending. And within chronic offending, he was noting the small differences actually that are made, and how there's a hard line of certain individuals that will continue to offend. But actually, what was being cited there was the opportunity, particularly in the ages that we're talking here, 18 to 25-year-olds, really. Making that change on people's lives at this point, so they don't continue to be offenders and develop into chronic offending. And so this age group is particularly interesting to us in a policing context and in a probation context, how it is that we work with this group now to help break that cycle. And it is about then, getting back to those ACE effects on their lives. And actually, the challenge there, I think, is about building empathy in those clients, and that comes about through building relationship with them and establishing that relationship. So that was it seemed to epitomize very much what we were trying to do in this project, is to reach through to those individuals so we can help them build empathy and understanding a relationship with people that actually in turn then helps reduce our offending patterns of behavior going forward, and which of course we all know may well run into generations. I mean, people become parents, and then their children may be in that experience, average childhood experience as well. So trying to break a pattern, of generational offending can be done in this context by building the relationship and changing lives of individuals. And Josh, it was really encouraging, in your presentation, just to see how that work is going on to build those relationships and make those sort of changes. So I'm sure many of you will resonate with what I've just said now. So Mel, if we move to next slide, please.
Thank you, Rhys. And I think, Rhys, this is something you said, is the progress is incremental progress. It's recognising support small, meaningful steps moving forward. So we're not saying that the young people we worked with were all successful. They had successes, they had failures, they moved forward, they moved backwards, but they were really passionate about making a difference and continuing their life outside of prison, outside criminality. And as Rhys said, some of these young people were actually exploited themselves, and through that then ended up within the criminal system. It was about building. Sorry, go on, Rhys.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think in many ways we liken this to, getting people on a wagon. So so we get people onto a wagon. We take them down the road towards what we hope will be better outcomes for them, and they fall off the wagon. And we may need to reverse the wagon a bit to go back and pick them up, get them back on before we go further forward. And again, they may fall off again at some point, and we've got to do the same again. In many ways, the group we're working with, it has a series of needs, and they're interconnected, those needs, and it's not straightforward and simple. And I think in real terms, this is very much around making incremental steps for people, meaningful steps, as it says there on the slide, to try to take people forward. The important thing for us really is that they're on the wagon, and by being on the wagon, they're making contact and they've got engagement with the people that's on the wagon, trying to take that wagon forward with them. And hopefully at some point they drive the wagon, they have that confidence to do that themselves really, and to take things forward, or might help us to also encourage other people to get on the wagon. It's a bit about building that dynamic if we can.
Yeah, definitely. And it's trusted relationships, and the relationship the young people had with their mentor was built up over time, and their relationship built and it developed into the way that the young people actually trusted him and turned to him when they needed to. One of the projects that they were involved in was training to work for the British Transport Police, was it? The British Transport Wales, sorry, through the police. And they did a programme of, I believe, 12 weeks. Is it 12 weeks, Rhys? Yeah,
we're trying to get people into working on the railway lines and to working for Network Rail, and to get people into employment that way as well, with better paid employment.
And it was a fantastic opportunity for the young people. But then it was the small steps that they were falling over, really, getting up on time, turning up at their appointments, and then the fear of going into a room to do sort of lessons and school as they would see it, and exams and stuff like that. The mentor was able to support them within that journey as well, and give them confidence that they can actually achieve what they want to achieve. This is just one case study. This is a young person who was living in a hostel, frequent drug user, attendance was low at meetings, didn't have many positive role models. He needed lots of support in getting his goals. He was given a wellbeing box because he was in hostel. He didn't have lots of items that he actually needed, so he was supported in stuff like that. And he was missing a lot of his appointments and various things he had to go to because he couldn't get there by bus because he didn't have the money or whatever other reason. So we managed to get him a donated bike that he fixed, and he recycled himself to hopefully support his transport needs. And this was just, I mean, there was so much more that went around this, but this is just a sort of snapshot of the case study. So in conclusion, the partnership between South Wales Police and Youth Cymru demonstrates the power of collaboration in supporting communities, overcoming challenges and fostering gradual, meaningful progress. This was a pilot. We're really keen to continue this and also support younger people. We see the importance of 18 to 25-year-olds, but then there's also scope to work with the younger age group to ensure that they're, as Rhys put it, on the wagon from the beginning without falling off. Thank you. Rhys, did you want to add anything at the end?
I think we've done there. I think it's our time, so thank you very much for listening. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Rhys. Really interesting, fascinating stuff there, and the power of partnerships and collaboration yet again, and youth work and public sector coming together. Multi-agency approach, of course, within the context of a great deal of complex needs. Thank you. Fantastic project, and thank you for your presentation. I'd now like to introduce Marco Gil Cervantes, who's the Chief Executive of Promo Cymru, and Janet Hayward, OBE, from Cadoxton and Oakfield Primary Schools. Over to you two, please.
Hi everybody. I've been introduced. I'm also a NIL associate. I'm on the executive of CWVYS and I'm on the youth work board. So got quite a few things to do. Can we put the slides up? I can't tell. No. Yeah. So we're just going to lead you through a kind of collaboration, and I would say that was kind of really key. That was a collaboration between us, Promo Cymru, coming from a youth background, a strong digital background, and primary schools. And we worked on part of the new curriculum, Leading Cynefin. We worked around discovering community treasure. So I'm going to pass you over to Janet to introduce herself.
Thanks, Marco. Bore da. I'm Janet Hayward. I'm currently executive head teacher, Cadoxton Primary School and Oakfield Primary School in Barry, associate of the academy, and I chair the federation right now. But Marco and I met, I think probably about 18 months ago now, Marco, when Marco became an associate, and we worked together in a coaching, mentoring relationship, and we started talking about some of our shared interests, and the whole notion of Cynefin was something we discussed at that point. So that's how this partnership and project was born. So bore da pawb.
Okay, next slide, please. So this is who we are, and there's a collaboration there. I've put some logos there, ourselves, Promo Cymru EVI that we run, because that was part of it as a community resource and building. And the schools around Cadoxton, Oakfield and Willowtown, which Willowtown is in Blaen y Gwent, and the other two schools are in Barry, and the learning partnership, which experts in curriculum helped. So bringing all this together made this work. So the collaboration of the right parts to do the right bits to make it all work was really, really crucial. And then it was supported by NIL with a small amount of funding. And the other biggest support was massive goodwill and work and the competence of our teams, really. I think that's what I always think is important. It's like sometimes I feel a bit of a fraud being a leader when you might kind of push it forward, but without teams behind you who can actually do it, you virtually become nothing. So next slide. Okay, so so we focused on through our discussions we could see that there was a sense of where you belong, the importance of where you belong as a part of your identity. If you're not able to exhibit your identity and your history, then it's very hard for an individual or a community to be positive about itself and its future. And so we were working with young people, and from our end, we felt that we had a lot of digital skills that we could bring to the table and some knowledge around history and how you produce history, and actually that young people could be the producers of their own history. So, but main thing for us is we provided some workshops around different digital storytelling, how to use different bits of equipment, both to the staff of both schools and to the young people, so that they would have some really good simple learning to be able to take forward, but also to do that learning not with super professional equipment, but actually using your own phones, using the stuff that school would already had, so that that can be implemented pretty quickly. And I suppose the other bit is not just the technical stuff, it's the thing around storytelling. What makes a good story? How do you put a good story together? So we were able to bring that to the group. If you next slide, please. Yeah, so a series of workshops. You can see photos there of working with different young people and creative skills. And the other thing is that the teachers and the pupils took it back to their own schools and then passed on their experience to others. Next slide, please. And that's over to you, Janet.
Thank you, Marco. So I think this concept of Cynefin is something that's really quite fundamental to our new curriculum in Wales. And visiting Ebervale and seeing everything that EVI represented, I felt a real connection to that. But I think quite often it's very difficult for schools to work in a meaningful way with their community. In the previous presentation, I think, Rhys, you said that everybody understands conceptually what your organisation does as police. But I think people think that they understand conceptually what schools are about. And actually, right now, we have to be so much more than perhaps what schools have been in the past. We have to work with our communities, but for our children to feel that school is meaningful to them and for parents to feel that school is meaningful to them as well, we have to buy into that understanding around Cynefin, identity, belonging and real inclusion. And I could really feel in EVI that that's what that institution was about. But even so, Marco wasn't at that point working with the local primary schools. And in the same way, I could understand that if there was something like EVI, perhaps close to us in Barry, we wouldn't be working because I think there are these silos and barriers. And I think that's a theme that comes through from a lot of the presentations this morning, isn't it? How can we break down some of the barriers to be more powerful within the work that we're doing? So these are children who are really discovering and documenting their stories, but doing it in a far more powerful way and exemplifying what Cynefin means to them by going out into the community, talking with members of the community and really being part of it and trying to save some of those stories. Next slide, please. So all of the work from Cadoxton, from Oakfield, from Willowtown, we brought it all together to a big performance of understanding in the Pierhead building back in November. We were supported by a range of members of the Senedd, but families and members of the public came along and they saw all of the work and the reflections from the children, and there were some fantastic bits of footage that had been caught then. Next slide, please. And there are just some examples of some of the beautiful work. So artwork, digital work, films, non-chronological reports and letters that the children had gathered in terms of Cynefin. Next slide.
Okay, so now I'm going to speed through because I'd like to show the video at the end, but I will we're kind of behind time, so I'll do. This is Ebervale Institute. Bramall Cymru is we always call ourselves a custodian of Ebervale Institute. We can't carry it anywhere. It's a community. It's a building for the community, built by steelworkers in the land of Nine and Bevan. This, if anything, epitomises sort of South Wales and you know, community and mutual and working together and supporting each other. I think an institute like Ebervale Institute does that. So, and this linked us back into the school. So that's great. Next slide, please. I'll go to the next slide, please. Shows you what AVI does. Provides pantry, food, lots of other things. So this is the workshops carried out. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, this is just what actually happened. So there was a lot of innovation. We, myself and Janet met, the two organizations met, and we decided to get on with it and trust each other and work together and do it. And that's as simple as sometimes it works. You know, you have to go with the flow. I think there was you know, and we followed that flow and tried something new. And we tried to work with a new curriculum, with the schools, and use our organisation youth, but also the anchor organisation around EVI and all that to push together. So next slide. And we mixed those skills together, you know, the learning partnership, the digital, we went for the flow, challenge convention. So we didn't actually start with, we're going to work out some sort of structure of all this. So we actually thought, no, we're going to go with it. We know about Cynefin, we know about the new curriculum. We're really keen on that, on thinking about the new curriculum and how the new curriculum works with the youth services as well, because I think there's a big challenge there for the youth services. Well, not for, I think it's the other way around, but there's a big challenge in how new curriculum and how youth services can work on this. It is with primary schools, but we always saw this as how Cynefin is important to community, Cynefin is important to the secondary schools, Cynefin is important to the youth sector. So it's important to us all. Next slide. Okay, so it's about sharing, the big effort, and the mix of specialisms, and the added value we could all bring. Next slide. I think we can move on to it, Big challenges, sustainability. How do we fund this? Social business model for us. How do we do that? How do we replicate this learning across Wales? How could people we wanted to have something that people could pick up and use in their schools further down the line, or youth services could use down the line. So that's where we're working together. And the thought process around a blueprint to do that. And both sectors working together. Next slide. Oh, I think it'll be the video then, I think, if I could. And again, next, yeah. So this will give you it's about 4 minutes, 3 minutes, but please give you background.
3, 2, 1,
Bore da, good morning. I'm Janet Hayward. I'm Executive Head Teacher at Cadoxton Primary School and Oakfield Primary School. And I'm also an Associate Member of the Leadership Academy for Wales.
So my name is Marco Cervantes. I'm in the National Leadership Academy as well. I'm the Chief Executive of the Program Recovery encompassing the Effaith Institute.
Here we are today at the Pierhead building in the middle of Cardiff, where so much industry and so much history began. We're celebrating what we call Cynefin, and Cynefin is at the heart of the curriculum for Wales.
I am Mark Isherwood from the National Academy for Educational Leadership. The Leading Cynefin project has allowed youth work practitioners, leaders from school and the voluntary sector to collaborate. And what they've demonstrated is that both the leaders, the practitioners, but also importantly the children and young people, it's had an impact on them.
My name is Alan Davis. I'm the member of the Senedd for Blaenau Gwent. To me, Cynefin means that place where we feel home, where we feel comfortable, the people as well as the place. So you've got the whole of the social and cultural and industrial and history of the people of the town.
Hi, I'm Mel Evans. I'm Head Teacher of Willow Town Primary School, which is in Ebervale in Blaenau Gwent. The digital workshops at the EVI, it was just invaluable. So they looked at storyboarding, photography, video creation. It's resulted in all of their work today, their final products. We would really like to bring EVI into school to work with other classes now that we know that offer is on our doorstep, and it's just grown organically and enabled us to cover all the full purposes, also the AOLEs, just in an authentic context.
So I'm Wendy Thomas, I'm Director of the Learning Partnership, and we're really fortunate that we work alongside schools, and I think this Cynefin project with Cadoxton and Oakfield and Willow Town has just an example, like almost a blueprint of how the curriculum for Wales can come to life in a really authentic way.
So my name's Becky Booker, I'm a local artist. I've been working with Cadoxton Primary School and Oakfield Primary School to create a lot of the lovely work you've seen in the exhibition today. Seeing the work pride of place in like an amazing, incredible building is just fantastic, yeah.
I think for the children it's the understanding that they're creating history as well, they're recording their identity of the community that gives strength to them and their communities.
Just looking around at the exhibition, I'm very impressed with some of the work that the children have been doing. The one thing that really got to me was that the children are going around helping the community.
This type of activity shows how the new curriculum can be brought to life when leaders across sectors collaborate together.
So I think you've got everything there. I think it's just I would just focus on the community-focused schools, that we started making those links, the new curriculum, and how collaboration across sectors can really work and bring new things to the table. Thank you.
Giacomo, Marco, and Janet as well. Thank you very much, and a fantastic way to finish that roundup of the first three sets of speakers. So thank you to all of you. And I think, Marco, the word trust, you used that in that presentation as well. I think that's a really important aspect of what you're doing. Clearly demonstrates the positive outcomes of practical and tangible projects, of course, and the power of Cynefin as well. So thank you very much for that. We're going to move on to our next speaker, but before we do, just to say, it never ceases to amaze me, really, in terms of the amount of fantastic stuff that's going on out there, and those examples of leadership in practice across the whole of Wales. And I'm sure those three examples gave everybody a real flavour of what's going on out there. And also a great opportunity for people on this call to network with each other as well, introduce each other through the chat bar, and to get those conversations going after this session and beyond, really. Okay, we're going to move on now to our next speaker, and that's Simon Frost. Simon is the Head of Education at the YMCA George Williams College, and he's going to tell us all about leading with impact. Simon, you're very, very welcome. I'd like to hand over to you now, please, for your presentation. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I'm just going to go through the challenging bit of the day, which is sharing my screen, but hopefully that will be fairly straightforward. Okay, so just very quickly, a little bit about myself. Simon Frost, and I'm Head of Education here at YMCA George Williams College. I joined the college about 25 years ago and then never left. That's not because it took me so long to finish my youth work training, but I just loved being around the place and being around practitioners and supporting educators in their professional journey, working with young people. So historically, I've done a lot of work training youth and community workers, but what I've seen over a period of time is that often people who start working with young people then find themselves in leadership positions and working more strategically, thinking about the impact of their work. And so latterly I've been thinking about how we can, as a college, as a field, we can be supporting and developing leaders as they are emerging, and recognising that leadership is a journey, it's a continuum that many of us are on. So I'd like to spend a bit of time this morning talking about collective leadership and why we do that. And I have to say, just listening to the kind of the stories, the accounts that we've heard so far, just so inspiring, and really just provide all the context I need just to share with you some more kind of sort of abstract, if you like, or sort of theoretical ideas. So hopefully you can start to see that there's a kind of sort of a concept, or there's a body of knowledge which supports the way in which all of the sort of the examples we've heard this morning. It helps to kind of explain what's going on there, maybe kind of give you some tools, some ideas, a sort of a way of thinking about collective leadership as you think about opportunities for yourselves as in your respective fields as leaders, and where there might be spaces for you to collaborate. So in kind of in sort of true sort of education style, I've got some kind of some aims and objectives here, really, just to think about the potential of collective impact, and how we go about thinking about planning a collective impact project. It was really interesting just to think about some of the starting places that we heard in some of the in the case studies. Often it's around a need, a sort of a shared need. Sometimes though, it's just a journey of discovery. Sometimes it's just about sitting down with people, talking about the work we do, sometimes with people we don't know. You know, I imagine it within this academy that there are opportunities just to kind of meet and network and share. And sometimes we start to realise there, actually, do you know what? There is a shared vision. There's a shared approach. So just spend a bit of time thinking about that in terms of in terms of potential to collaborate and how we begin to kind of sort of start on that journey. I'm going to say a little bit about what I think collective impact is and the scope of collective impact, what we can achieve through collective impact, understand the benefits of collective impact. And again, I think we've heard kind of firsthand in real life context, just how much we can achieve, kind of the benefits of working with others rather than sort of trying to do things by ourselves, and then give you a brief for collective impact that you can take away. So time permitting, there's an opportunity just to get you into little groups for a few minutes at the end, just to start to look at the architecture of collective impact and how that all you know, how that all fits together. Okay, I've just seen a message. So the breakout thing's not happening. We're going straight to the Q&A. Okay, good. Thank you, Paul. Okay, you can breathe a sigh of relief now. Yes, thank you, Tim, for being my secretary, passing the messages on. So where are we? Yes, so collective impact then. So the model I want to talk to you about, it's an idea that Stanford University in the States came up with sort of fairly recently, and they talk about there being 5 things to think about when it comes to thinking about collective impact. And again, many of this is stuff, a lot of this stuff is stuff we've heard about already. A common agenda, the idea that we come together with a purpose, because it's not just ourselves, but there are others who are concerned about the same things that we are. So that is sort of super important. Thinking about how to measure the impact as well, and kind of sharing that, whether we all use the same measurement tools, or sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's important that we are able to offer our kind of individual perspectives as part of a collective, with a view to then kind of sort of sharing a much kind of sort of stronger and louder story as a sector or as a collaboration. It's important to think a bit about how, as a collective, we are working together, and that our activities as individual members of a collective are mutually reinforcing. Communication is really important, and also the idea that we have a sort of a backbone that runs through the whole collective. So let me just a couple of slides just to kind of sort of expand on these points a bit. So in terms of sort of the common agenda, what we're talking about here is a kind of a characteristic that allows kind of community members. And when I say community members, I'm talking about the collective members of a collaboration. So sort of Josh, earlier when in your presentation you talked about the police, the youth service, housing associations, local community projects. You know, all the examples we've heard here. I'm using the word community member here to describe, in a sense, the collaboration, the collective. It is part. It's looking at it as a community, that we all have our part to play, but we are all working towards the same goal. That's so important. The point of a collaboration or a collective is not that we're all doing the same thing all together all the time, but it's recognizing that actually, as a sum of parts, when we all come together, we have much greater power. We have much greater reach. When it comes to kind of a shared measurement system, the common agenda is super important. It's difficult for collaborators to agree on what needs to be measured, or to define the success of a venture if you don't have, if you haven't got a kind of a process for bringing your kind of the different kind of impact measurement stuff together. So it's important that you're getting your results, and the results are reliable, that there's an opportunity to kind of conclude and kind of bring things together. I think I'm trying to go back to the phrase that Janet used in the last presentation. I think she said a presentation of understanding. I don't know if that was if I heard that correctly. I thought what a brilliant way to kind of sort of bring things together, to actually show that, you know, that having kind of measured the impact of stuff, it's an opportunity to kind of share that understanding as a collective. Many voices in that, painting a really rich and strong picture. Continuous communication, really important in any kind of collective, in any kind of partnership. It's yeah, I can't underestimate that. You know, I remember recently a colleague said to me when they were talking about kind of working with new agencies, and that they've got a question, and the question they ask of any kind of partner or any kind of collective is, what will give you confidence in what I'm doing? And I think that's just such an important part of communication, because we aren't just working within our own systems and structures. We're entering a sort of a state of kind of not knowing, really, because, you know, we are working with other agencies. We don't know these, you know, don't necessarily know these people. We might have a sense of them, maybe they have a, you know, as a sort of field of practice, the police, education, so a sort of a sense of what they are, but we don't actually know the people who are involved necessarily, and what's going on at a local level. So communication can really help in terms of that, ensuring that that trust and that respect. In the model here, I think this is kind of really helpful, and I appreciate it's not necessarily the kind of the most kind of sort of practical approach, but there's something about that within a collective, that there is one organisation or kind of one area who is responsible just for pulling it all together. This is often where kind of collectives or collaborations start to unravel, where there's too many people trying to administrate or manage the collective. You've got stakeholders all with a shared vision, but the kind of the administration of everything is that people only take responsibility for their own kind of actions. They aren't actually kind of properly kind of collaborating at an administrative level. So this isn't necessarily about kind of one administrator or one organisation doing the administration for everything, but it's important there is one if you like, a sort of a back, well, the phrase that they use here in the Stanford Review is a backbone, something that pulls it. There's someone there who's absolutely driving the collective, driving the partnership all the time. This might not be so important where you've maybe just got one or two agencies involved in a collaboration, because you're, you know, that obviously you're kind of, you know, you're working in, that's more of a kind of a partnership. But this does become important where you're starting to bring together kind of lots of different stakeholders, where you've got maybe kind of 3 or 4 agencies. Some might be big, some might be small, kind of varying in infrastructure, resources, capacity. The importance of having one organisation who is kind of holding it all together. I can't underestimate the importance of that, and that's something I would strongly advocate. Okay, so some things. So I can't see everything on my screen because everything is. Where are we? Okay, right. Thanks, Tim. I've got people on my screen, and I can't actually see what's on my screen. So some factors then that can support collective impact here. Shared aims, as we've already kind of talked about. A clear membership structure. So again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, the membership structure of a collective is all the different organisations. And if you think about the way in which an organisation has like a sort of an individual organisation might have an organisational structure, like a diagram, if you like, so you can see kind of what the structure is, where the power is, who has responsibility for what, who does what, how it all works together as a system. I would advocate doing something like that for a collective approach to a project. But rather than having sort of departments necessarily, you've actually got a map which shows who the organisations are, who does what, when, where communication occurs, who's taking responsibility for what. Having that, being able to kind of visualise that structure of your collective, of your partnership, is super helpful. Going back to, I think, who was it? Sorry, going back through my notes here. Someone was talking about kind of where there was churn in organisations and how that can affect kind of sort of collective working. But if you've got a kind of sort of a clear membership structure, kind of within the kind of various areas, you can kind of see, well, this is what this agency or this part of the structure or this part of the collective is meant to be doing. So whatever the churn is, we can see that that's what they're responsible for. And then when new people come in, they can see the collective structure and go, right, okay, this is where I fit in. This is where I line up. This is my role. This is my responsibility as part of this collective approach. So Shared aims, a clear structure for the collective, that's super important. A couple of other things here, respect and power. Again, you know, we've heard the word trust mentioned an awful lot. Those kind of dynamics around kind of partnership, having a confidence in the people that we're working with is so important. And again, don't want to underestimate the importance of maintaining those relationships. I'm jumping to the end of the slide here, but communication is an important part of that. You know, ask questions if there's stuff you don't know about. If stuff doesn't appear to be happening, go to the organisation who's meant, or the team, or the person who's meant to be holding it all together. Often that, you know, having that kind of sort of one conduit controlling the communication can be really helpful. But it's important, I think, you know, it's like Josh was saying at the start. So much of, you know, we can learn so much from actual youth work practice. We know how to relate to people. We know how to build respect. We know how to build trust. We know how to communicate effectively. We know how to engage in dialogue. We know how to affirm people. We know how to build people up. All of these principles are equally important in any kind of collective, collaborative approach. At the centre of the slide here, I've put down power, because that has the potential to really disrail a partnership. I think we have to accept that in different partnerships, there are going to be different levels of power. And sometimes, and that can be for many different reasons. It could be that you've got an organisation, part of a collective, who are really quite well established, have got lots and lots of funding, have been around for an awful long time. You might have a kind of a small third sector organisation, a charity perhaps, who wants to be involved in that collective. You know, in terms of kind of capacity, in terms of expertise, nowhere near the kind of the scale as the larger organisation. And so on paper, this can create an imbalance. But if you've got a clear membership structure, if you can understand kind of what people's roles are, and this ties in a bit with the identity stuff on the bottom left there, if you can understand what everyone's doing, how it all fits together systemically, and why everyone is needed to do their bit for the collective to work, then that should mitigate any kind of sort of power struggles. If you go into a collective looking to compete, if you go into a collective looking to win, if you go into a collective looking to exert yourself, then it's not going to work. That's not the spirit to go into a collaboration. Fidelity, do what you say you're going to do. You know, kind of sort of stick to the plan. Don't deviate. You've got a structure, and often, you know, sometimes there's a risk, I think, in collectives where you seem to be working together. You come together. You'll say you're all doing, you know, you're working together, but then you go away and you think, oh, I could do this a bit better another way, and go off and start ploughing your own furrow. It's really important from the collective that you don't do that, because that will kind of negate trust and respect, and then things just really start to unravel. So fidelity, do what you say you're going to do and stick to it. That ties in very much with sort of the importance of kind of responsibility. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't, then again, communication is super important. It's really important that everyone understands kind of, you know, as a system, kind of the collective should be working well. When I think of someone talked about systemic leadership earlier, you know, that idea that I think of a kind of an analog watch, all the cogs turning, and the point at which one cog stops working, then the whole clock stops. It's really important that everyone is doing their bit. If you can't do your bit with it as part of the collective, then you need to say that. You need to kind of sort of turn around to the rest of the organisations and say, hang on, guys, we're struggling here. This isn't working. Can we do some things differently? Can you support us? Maybe we need to take a step back, because otherwise we'll all everyone else will carry on doing their bit. But when we try to put it all together in that kind of sort of celebration of impact, you won't have what you need to be able to kind of sort of share your part of the story. So a number of things there that can impact in terms of working collectively. Right, next slide. Where are we? Okay, so just some advantages and some disadvantages, and I think again in some of the examples that we've been given here, we've heard that kind of where the opportunities are, but then equally sometimes there are challenges around working collectively for impact. It can save on time and resources. It could be that maybe within your organisation there's certain stuff that you can't achieve yourself, but there's another organisation that has some infrastructure or some resources, some time, and it can give that, and that coupled with your expertise, actually that kind of saves time and is a good way of working together. in terms of impact reporting. If you're all going to be kind of putting everything together into one big report, kind of reduces the risk of just kind of duplicating, rather than lots of small organisations just kind of sort of saying the own thing for themselves, putting it all together. It reduces duplication. It amplifies the voice. In terms of impact measurement, it improves standards. And I think this is largely down to accountability, because you're not just telling your own story, you're telling your story as part of other people's stories as well. That kind of collective whole story coming together. And that requires that kind of level of accountability. It's all got to stack up. The story's got to be consistent. The bit that you're doing has got to line up with what everyone else is doing. And that will drive up standards, that accountability. Systems thinking is something else which we see encouraged, because again, you're starting to see the impact of what you do in relation to the impact of what other organisations are doing. That systemic approach, just kind of because it's starting to recognise that the work we do, we don't exist in a vacuum. Where we're doing something is having an impact somewhere else. In terms of that line of accountability, we might not see that all the time, but we know that where we're working with young people, the stuff we are doing is having an impact in other contexts. It allows comparison. It allows us to kind of look at our own impact in relation to what other people are doing. I think that fosters professional development. It fosters learning. It fosters a kind of reflection. We can learn from working with other people. And it can help in terms of just kind of bringing together measurement as well around collective impact. It may be that we can learn from how other people are measuring impact potentially, and start to use other kind of maybe kind of look at kind of sort of shared tools perhaps for impact measurement where that's appropriate. So lots of advantages, but for the sake of balance, there are challenges as well. So sometimes it can take time to get to actually agree on shared values, shared goals. Sometimes kind of when we start to work collaboratively, you know, I've been in organisations or supported organisations where they feel that their nuance, their uniqueness is being lost. It's being glossed over under a sort of a bigger collective. And sometimes that's that can be a challenge for some organisations, especially where they're kind of, they don't have a stronger identity as other organisations, and they can feel a little displaced or a little overlooked. Not all funders like this. Some funders, they want to kind of they want to foster competition. It's kind of basic kind of capitalist principles, I suppose, and the idea that when they see organisations coming together and working as a powerful collective, they don't like that. Oh, excuse me, summer cough. Sometimes it can be difficult just to kind of understand the impact of different organisations. It's we've got the kind of, especially where you're bringing sort of different sectors together, and they've got used to kind of reporting in different ways. So we sort of talk here about kind of risk of comparing apples and oranges. Quite difficult, but they are both fruit. So there is a connection to be made somewhere. We have to work harder to find those connections. In terms of working together, inevitably we might find that we find ourselves comparing ourselves to other organisations. Kind of envy and competition starts to creep in, where we starting to compare ourselves with others, and that's something that has to be kind of sort of thought through. And then finally, data protection, and quite rightly, we have to be very careful in terms of, I think it was Mel earlier was talking about GDPR and what information could be shared and what information can't be shared. Again, so when I look at the list of disadvantages, I don't think that any of this stuff is insurmountable, but it's not plain sailing, and we just have to kind of lean into it hard to be able to overcome it. I don't think it's a reason not to collaborate, but it's just kind of going into a collaboration or a collective way of working around a sort of a bigger project or a bigger issue. It's just important to recognise you might hit these bumps. On the way. Just a couple last slide, I think, and then I think it's probably it for me, because I think we're then going to go into a breakout group. We're going to sort of skip that. There are, just to kind of focus on some different things. It may be that in a kind of, when it comes to collective impact, you're not necessarily doing everything together, but you might just focus on different elements. And this could just be about data sharing and kind of sharing the sort of the impact of what you do. So it could be where you're kind of recording demographics and sharing that as part of a collective. It could be your outputs, it could be your monitoring engagement and feedback, it might be your quality reports, it could be your outcomes, it could be your data analysis. So lots of things that you might be doing independently as an organisation, but then when you start to share this information collectively, it can then lead to other things, and potentially it's a start of then kind of thinking, right, there's an opportunity here. We can see what we're doing. We've kind of shared our data, we've shared our insights. We're on the same page here. There's some other organisations kind of focusing on these areas. Let's get together. Let's think about moving forward collectively. At this point, I was going to send you off into groups to think about some of these ideas. But oh, hang on a second. I've got a question in chat. Anyone here from schools environment? No. Oh no, sorry.
That one.
Okay, I've got a question. Can I answer a question? Is that all right? Can I do that? Okay, just bear with me a second. Tim's showing me stuff on our screen. So it's important to actually understand the limitations sometimes. Yes. So a question here from kind of Rhys about recognising the limitations, I think, of what other organisations are able to achieve. I think it's important when we get together. You know that the idea of the kind of the diagram I talked about everyone kind of knowing what they're able to do and what they can contribute. I think that's a good opportunity, if you like, to do an audit, if you like, of kind of, well, this is the organisation, this is the capacity, this is what we can do, these are our limitations, this is what we can't do. So quite early on, you're setting out all of those setting out all the expectations. So yes, there are no surprises. I also think, I think kind of in any kind of relationship, if you think about it, we are, if you think about our work with young people, our work with colleagues, our peers, it's about managing expectations, isn't it? And so I think, yes, the same kind of logic, the same kind of principles apply very much to collective working.